Yo, welcome back to the No Bullshit Podcast. It's Coughlin.
Yo, what's up, it's Kyle.
And yeah, man, we've been going on a little roll for, all these basketball pods, right? And so you see it here, we're bringing it back with football, right? And what better way than, come back and just talk about things that's happened in free agency and, the draft is coming up. So we'll talk about that. But, you know what? Kai just started off for us.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest move of this past week or so, obviously has been Stephon Diggs being traded from the Bills to the Texans.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the uh, the Bills, they wound up buying out his contract, which makes him an unrestricted free agent in 2025. The Bills are paying $31 million in dead cap space, um,
Yeah.
which is the highest dead cap charge of any wide receiver in NFL history. So, in my opinion, that goes to show like really how bad that relationship soured in terms of Diggs and Buffalo.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it it's a lot of speculation as to why this happened, if it was, an issue with him and Josh Allen. The reality of the situation is, Josh Allen had to okay this move, right? He had to say, I am okay with this being done, because if he had an issue with it, he would have stopped it. So I feel like if where there's smoke, there's fire. So obviously we're not in the locker room, so I can't tell you exactly what happened or why or all that, but one thing that you can't say is that Stephon Diggs isn't productive. In the 4 years that he was with the Buffalo Bills, he actually led the league in receptions over those 4 years. He led the league with 445. Next closest was Devontae Adams with 441. Number three was Tyreek Hill with 436. So this is a number one wide receiver, right? So
100%. Yeah.
going over to Houston, get matched up with that young talented receiver core, the young talented quarterback. The Texans are really positioning themselves into a position where there could be a real threat in the playoffs next year.
Oh yeah, 100%, man. And staying on that topic of the Texans just loading up on the offseason, right? I think you can I think you can hand down say that they probably had, if not probably the best offseason. I mean, you could definitely debate it when you can get, Daniil Hunter, Danico Autry, right? Also getting their linebacker of the future, right? Aziz Al Shair, and then a few, project cornerbacks and Akuda, C.J. Henderson. These were like first round picks, remember, right? And that's to go alongside with having Derek Stingley, right? So that could be really interesting. And they re-signed Derek Barnett, right, to a 1 year deal, right? In which we all saw that when he was let go by the Eagles to the Texans, he started balling. Man, he started balling, especially in the playoff games,
Yep.
right? And so it's definitely interesting how they position themselves in the AFC. And who knows if they look good on paper, but they got to execute,
Yep.
right? And so they definitely look really good based off like the moves they made. And just to quickly talk about like the Bills basically swallow some of their pride, pretty much, right? Because not only did they have to, because of the contract, right? They also had to give up this year a fourth this year and a fifth next year, right? And they're getting back a second round pick that's in next year's draft, right? And so it goes to show how much that they had to do to let him go,
Yep.
right? And it's going to be interesting how they try to build the roster, because obviously they still had their first round pick this year. They have a second round pick this year as well, right? And so it's going to be interesting how they're going to go with their receiving core, because their best receiver right now is Khalil Shakir, and that's not going to cut it. That's
Yeah.
not going to cut it. And you're not going to tell me that freaking Dalton Kincaid is going to be like the main guy. And
It's a lot of 12 personnel sets with Kincaid and Knox. So
yeah,
yeah, I mean, if I'm the GM here, your first pick has to be a wide receiver. You just got to go to the best receiver available and hope for the
hmm
best. But like you said, I mean, they get a second round pick back, but that isn't going to come to fruition until next season. But I like it's very rare you see situations like this where a team is like pretty desperate to get rid of a talented player.
Mm-hmm.
So it that only goes to show again just how sour that relationship got in Buffalo.
Yeah, and like speaking of like talented players getting moved on, right? Let's talk about Hassan Reddick going to the Jets, right?
Yep.
Because that was another big move, right? Where Reddick he wanted to get a contract extension, right? And I mean, kudos to him. He's put his head down. He's worked hard. It's like I mean, he hasn't caused really much any drama about the contract. It's like when it gets to it, it comes to it, right? And I
Yep.
guess like when it came down to it, I guess there was a reason why they drafted Nolan Smith,
Yeah.
right? Because they kind of just foreshadowed the future where maybe if Reddick did ball out again, then they could get some trade value from him while just drafting his heir apparent,
Replacement. Yep.
right? And so it's interesting, but I just don't know because like what they got back, I get it. Because if the Jets pay him, then that's because like his value is obviously high in a sense where like the
Yeah.
player he is, right? Like you talking about a guy in the past I think 3-4 years he stacks up like the top of the top, like with T.J. Watt, Miles Garrett, and Nick Bosa in terms of like sack numbers and all that, right? And so he's a premier pass rusher. That's without a
Hmm.
doubt,
Yep.
right? But it goes to show that like it's kind of hard to also trade pass rushers like that also want to get big money because we seen it at Brian Burns where like the best they could the Giants got and I know they could have got two first a few years back but just talking about right now because like he's in a contract year, right? And so he wants to get paid but they only got like a second round pick or so back, right? But that's the thing. Reddick is a little bit older, so they only
Yep.
got a third round pick. In
Yep.
which I don't think that's the problem for me. It's just that it's 2 years. It's in the draft in like 2 years. I don't know who that player could be. Who knows? Who knows that might be the next Hassan Reddick or whoever it is, right? So we'll we'll just have to see how the what that draft pick will become, and
Yeah.
so yeah, I don't know. I mean, the Jets definitely the defense is definitely getting a lot better.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to building rosters, especially with such a I wouldn't necessarily say strict cap, but especially compared to other sports, is pretty strict. So when you're building a roster, you can't just think short term. You have to think long term as well. And it's one of those risky moves where you move on from an older player, and the reality situation is the Eagles, as successful as they've been in the last couple years or so, they need to get younger. Um,
Yes.
moving on from Fletcher Cox and moving on from Hassan Reddick. Not only does that move a lot of money off, right? Jason Kelsey, etc. But not only does that move some money off, but it also gives these young guys some runway, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you drafted Nolan Smith in the first round, right? So you
Yep.
have to trust in your evaluation. You have to trust in your ability to develop your players. And like you said, like this was the reason why you took Nolan Smith in the first round. Where now with this season, it gives you that flexibility to move on from Hassan Reddick and now have a younger and cheaper, more importantly, a cheaper D line. Right? It's a risk, right? Because Hassan Reddick is pretty much a proven guy in the league.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but you're all of this, if I'm Howie Roseman, I look like the smartest guy in the room. If in a year or two, you know, Noah Smith is giving me double digit sacks, right?
Yes.
So it's just one of those risks that ultimately I feel as though the compensation that you're getting back for Hassan Reddick matters less to me than moving off of his money and getting younger. Now, if you
Mm.
didn't have a guy like behind him, I would have wanted a little bit more back in return. But because, like you said, they invested in their team and got themselves a Nolan Smith, I feel like
Exactly.
that value that Nolan Smith could possibly bring makes up
Mhm.
for that. If
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, all things said, I mean, we'll just have to see how it pans out. I mean, there's a reason why there's initial reactions, and there's a reason why certain trades would become revisited, right?
Yep.
For example, like I mean, I think you mentioned this, in a few videos back where you talked about like the CMC trade, right? At first, there was hesitancy. It was like, wait, a team that usually is running back by committee trades for a running back. Like, how does that really work out? And the value of running backs about it's really iffy, right? Because they usually running backs to stay healthy and production wise and all that stuff. But you know, if CMC stays healthy, that's the thing. If he stays healthy, he the trade is like is worth it. So there's a lot of things where trades where they're either revisited and
It's funny that you
yeah.
bring up the CNC trade because, funny enough and crazy enough, my stance on the trade it still stays the same.
Mm,
Um, I feel as though it was a move. Like it wasn't a bad move. Even at the time, I didn't say it was a bad move. Just if I was the GM, I wouldn't have made that move.
mm.
Yes, he has. Yes, he's elevated your offense. However, I would also argue also Brock Purdy has uplifted your offense too,
Oh yes, one hundred
where
percent.
the money that you're paying Christian and that's the biggest thing, right? Where again we're talking about the cat, where it's just the money where the amount of money and assets that you allocated to a Christian McCaffrey is, now indirectly putting your team in issues that we'll talk about a little bit later in the pod, right? Where
Mm,
not everybody can get paid. So if I had to choose a position that would kind of get shafted in that aspect, especially with being a team that is pretty much a running back factory, I
yeah.
don't know if I would necessarily go that hard on that position.
Hmm.
Because again, it seemed like, for the past 4 years or so, no matter who you guys have in that backfield, they were getting 1,000 yards. Now, funny enough, this was the one season that having Christian McCaffrey was so important because
Oh yeah.
O line really took a nosedive compared to the years past. So
Yes.
having a Christian McCaffrey back there where he can kind of make make a lot more with a lot less,
Hmm.
that's really where you saw the value of him, right? But
Hmm.
um, again, like you just said, a lot of these trades it takes maybe 2 years before you can really say who
Hmm.
won the trade, who lost the trade, whatever.
Yeah.
Um, but kind of taking a pivot instead of trades. A lot of guys in the NFL got paid right in the last couple of days.
Yep.
One of those guys being Josh Allen, the other Josh Allen. Uh, signs a 5-year, $150 million deal, crazy money.
Hmm.
You know, Last year, he was tied for second in the NFL with most sacks with 17 and a half. He has 45 career sacks in 74 games. Um, he turns this is a 5-year deal, and he turns 27 in July. So
Hmm.
there's a possibility that this deal is going to last until he's like 32. So that's,
Yeah.
in my opinion, that's really good value. The first year of the deal is 32 million base salary. Second year is 22 million. Third is 23. In
Hmm.
2027. But funny enough, in 2027, the Jags actually have an out in his contract where
Mm.
going forward, like for that final year of his deal, they can move off of him and have zero dead cap space. So I believe he would be around maybe 31. So if he really starts to take a nosedive in production, they could cut loose that last year of his contract and pretty much wipe their hands of it. But
Hmm.
Josh Allen, in my opinion, he's kind of on an uphill trajectory in terms of his level of play, especially with getting the guys that they have acquired in this offseason on that D line to help him. The Jags are another team that can stake the claim of having the best offseason, right? So
Hmm.
I believe with getting all that help around him, it's only going to make him better. Um, he may not have as great a stats because there's just so many guys, but I feel
Mhm.
like his impact, or at least that total defense, is going to be way better. Probably the best defense that he's ever been a part of, right? So,
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah.
in my opinion, might bring back shades of Saxonville with Calais Campbell, Jalen Ramsey, and AJ Boye and them boys. Like this is a reality. So definitely is important to get your cornerstone guy paid, get him there. He's arguably your best player, right? So
Yeah.
making sure that you keep him and keep him in Duval, that's just paramount.
Yeah, man. Like, that's like one of the things I like to see. I love to see, man. Like when you see guys that are like young prospects and they got that talent, right? All they need to do is just break out, and when they break out, they are gonna make a statement. All
Yep,
right, and talking about a statement season where he had like what 17 sacks, I believe,
yep,
or something like
17 and
that.
a half. Yep,
Yeah, 17 and a half. Where he balled out, man. He balled out. Like you turn on every Jaguars game, he's always making a play,
yep.
always making a play, right? And it's funny enough when I think one of my favorite moments of his career so far was you know Josh Allen sacking Josh Allen, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so I mean Josh Allen he looks a little different, where it's a little looks just a little different, right? But he gets the job done, right? And so yeah, I mean, I have a lot of things I could say about Trent Baalke. He was my former GM, right? He loves drafting people with torn ACLs, but it is what it is, right? He's trying to learn from his mistakes, and I credit him to that, right? And so I think Trent Baalke, he's taking a piece of what he learned from the Niners regime, where it's like defense first. And when we looked at the Jaguars team, like you said, you want to get back to where they were, well, at least like successfully
mhm,
wise, they had a great defense,
yep,
right? And so it was important to reassure that D line and get some corners and safeties here and there, right? And
yep.
obviously they have the draft as well, so it's gonna be interesting how they attack the draft.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like you said, this has been a great off season so far for the Jaguars. Barely missed out on the playoffs. They kind of had a rough streak towards the end of the season, so they're trying to get. They see what the Texans are doing, and they're trying to keep up. So I commend them for that. Still got the draft to go, but it'll be very interesting to see that division going into next season. I feel as though um, the Jaguars and Texans have rightfully so kind of separated themselves from the Colts and the Titans. Which even with that, the Colts and the Titans themselves have made some moves. So I believe it is a two-man race per se, two-team race per se.
Mm-hmm.
But the Titans and the Colts could be very sneaky in that division. It seems like
Yeah.
the AFC South is kind of like the NFC East of the
Yes.
AFC, right? Like where it always seems like it's just somebody different with a division. All of their games are close, no matter
Mm-hmm.
no matter the record. So
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing the Texans and the Jaguars really battle it out. Um, but again, with all these teams, what's important is that you make sure that you have a cornerstone, a franchise guy, and the Jaguars lock their guy up.
Yeah, and just staying on that roller coaster right there, right, and where let's talk about another guy who got paid, right,
Yep.
Derek Brown, right, from the Panthers. The Panthers, they're one of those organizations where they're tricky,
Yep.
right, where it's like you can see that I guess the talent that they drafted over the past couple years,
Mhm.
right, but it's just very frustrating because they never had like a actual coach that can like be consistent
Yeah.
and you know but that's the thing, right? Because the NFC South, I think it's been past few years now, it's been wide open,
Yep.
right? It's just a matter of like somebody in that
Brady left.
division.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just been a matter of like one of those teams in that division finding the right coach. It's like, yo, come on, there's an opportunity right here for the Panthers getting Dave Canales right from the Bucks, right? They have an opportunity where They reassured their O line. They're now reassured their D line, right? And Derek Brown, I think he's one of the most underrated D tackles in the league,
Hmm.
man. I think personally he's a top five D tackle, even maybe top four,
I can see that.
right? Right, and and that's the thing. He doesn't really get talked about because it's the Panthers. The Panthers are
Yep.
ass. Like,
Yep.
let's be honest here, they're ass right now, right? They could prove me wrong next season, but until otherwise,
Yeah.
the results have shown they haven't done anything, right, since
Yeah.
the Super Bowl year.
Yeah. That's kind of the give and take of the NFL, right? Where if
Mhm.
you're just because you're a primetime player doesn't mean that you get the attention of a primetime player, right? If you're
Exactly.
on, a poverty franchise, that's just, how it goes. And,
Hmm.
that's no fault of Derek Brown, right? Last year, 103 tackles, most tackles by any D lineman in the league, right? And that's a big man making all those tackles. So, um, just to dive into the contract, 4-year deal, 96 million. Um, very, very, very similar to Josh Allen's, where after the first 3 years, everything else can be dropped, at zero a dead cap. So again, it's a negotiation, both for the player and for the franchise, where obviously both people are trying to protect their assets. Right, as a player, I'm trying to get the most money I can because my career is very short. And from a franchise perspective, I want to make sure that this deal doesn't, you know, have a negative effect on us in the future. Um, he turns 26 in, funny enough, about 3 days. So probably by the time that this video is uploaded, he'll probably be 26, right? So could be the end of his deal. He's just turning 30, so he could possibly have a second contract in him. And very similar to Josh Allen. You're getting those cornerstone guys, right? You drafted Bryce Young with the first overall pick last year, so getting a guy like Derek Brown on that defense, he's now your captain, right? You moved on from Brian
Hmm.
Burns. Um, I don't believe that they brought Jeremy Chin back, so
No, he
they
went to
moved
Washington.
on
Yeah.
from Jackson, so a lot is on the shoulders of Derek Brown in terms of that defense, and they gave him the money to back up that belief. So I'm
Hmm.
very excited to see not only what Carolina can do next season, but what Derek Brown can do now that he got that money.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely gonna be interesting, not only for the Panthers, but like every team in that division. Because, like I said, it's wide open.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, what's it called? Is there another prospect or another
It's,
movie?
it's, it's, it's one last guy that I want to talk about in terms of this free agency so far. At least in my opinion, that caught my eye, and
Mm.
for a lot of you, it may not be immediately come to mind, but in my opinion, that's Carson Wentz signing a 1 year, $3 million deal
Yes.
to the Kansas City Chiefs. Um, Carson Wentz is funny enough a guy that I've like historically been a big fan of.
Hmm.
Um, and now I'm conflicted. Right, he puts me in a position where he got that red on, and it's always going to be respect, but you know, I just, you know what, sticking to strictly football, I feel like this is a really good fit for Carson Wentz for the Chiefs, where
Oh
if you
yes.
get a guy that is a backup but has a good amount of experience as being not only a starter but a high level starter.
Hmm.
So just in case if you're in a position where Mahomes has to sit a game or two or whatever, or maybe even come out of the game for a couple of series, that you have a guy back there that is not going to throw the game away, right? Where he can make a couple passes and have some positive plays, and we saw that right with the Rams in the last game of the season. That was kind of his league audition, right, where he was able to kind of put the league on notice and be like, hey, like I still got something in the tank. So it would not be out of the realm of possibility that after a year or so under Kansas City, that next year team it's that's just part of the NFL. Every year people are looking for quarterback play. So if he can, kind of study under Andy Reid and that offense, and maybe have a showing or two at the end of the season, really perform again, where the following offseason he could put himself in a position where he could get maybe a low level contract similar to like a Baker Mayfield, right? Where he signed with the
Yes.
Tampa Bay Buccaneers to kind of put himself back in the conversations of being a starting quarterback, which I feel like is a tough pill to swallow, right? If you are a Carson Wentz, right? Because
Yeah.
it's only rightfully so. You don't get to being a pro player without having some level of an ego, right? Especially when
Hmm.
you have performed well, when you have been in MVP conversations, when you do have a Super Bowl ring. It's hard to like go to being a backup, but sometimes when you're going through this route, it's a long journey. But if you stick to it, you keep your head down, you keep working. All you need is one opportunity. That's what Tom Brady said. He said, if I get my opportunity, I'm gonna make sure that they never take me off the field again. So that's just the mentality that you got to have. I believe that's the mentality that Carson Wentz has, and I'm rooting for his success outside of Kansas City.
No, I feel you, man. And like, you talked about it a little bit, before we got on the pod. But that was one thing I wanted to mention that I didn't tell you that I was going to mention right now. But funny enough, so like there's this beat reporter for the 49ers. His name is Grant Cohn, if you guys don't know, right? And he put out a tweet on on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, right? And
It'll always be Twitter, bro.
yeah, right. And it was a funny text where basically he said something like, "Oh, the Chiefs just signed another quarterback that the Niners can't beat," and it's funny because like it's true. Like Mahomes, he's their enemy to win a Super Bowl, and Carson Wentz in general. I think we've never won against them. I
Yeah, he might
swear.
be like 3-0 against the 49ers. I believe like two times with the Eagles
Yeah,
and one
and one
time with
time
the
last year.
Rams. But
Yeah, so
like
it's like,
it's crazy. Like some players just have that. They just
hmm
have teams' numbers like for the weirdest reasons, right? But that is kind of funny, right? That that both those quarterbacks are in the same QB room. Um,
hmm
but yeah, like I said, I'm still a fan of Carson Wentz.
yeah,
I'm rooting for his success outside of Kansas City. Um, but it's just one of
yeah,
those things.
yeah. It's actually since he brought that up, like, what if it's the what if Carson Wentz is starting for the Kansas City Chiefs for some reason with Mahomes injured, right?
Hmm.
And he plays the Chargers in the AFC Championship. I know. Obviously, the Chargers, right? But
Not
if he
even
goes on,
not even a question. Even if they were playing somebody else, I don't want the fucking Chiefs going to another Super Bowl. But would be
yeah.
funny, and Carson Wentz has the chance to do the funniest thing ever. If Patrick Mahomes gets,
Oh my
obviously, I don't
god.
I don't want this to happen, right? I don't root injury on anybody. But if Patrick Mahomes gets hurt middle of the season,
Hmm.
Carson Wentz comes in and leads the Chiefs to another Super Bowl, right? Where
Uh-huh.
it's the full circle from him and Nick Foles. Obviously, I do not
Hmm.
want Kansas City to win
Hmm.
another fucking Super Bowl,
Yeah.
but just from a objective storyline perspective, that would be hilarious.
Especially if it's against the Eagles too. That would be so
Yeah.
funny.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Yo, we might be.
That's still
We might gotta start writing the script. Nah, I don't want the Chiefs to win that too. Fuck it. I feel like now is a perfect time to pivot to another topic. You
yeah.
know, the draft is right around the corner, so I
Hmm.
feel as though it's only right that we give a little bit more thoughts about some of the prospects that are going to be drafted. Um,
Hmm.
so I figure it'll be fun to kind of give about 5 prospects that we believe are underrated, right? Not
Hmm.
getting a lot of attention, or we feel as though not getting the level of respect in terms of draft position that they should get.
Hmm.
And the opposite, right? Guys that we believe are a little overrated,
Yeah.
guys that are in mock drafts that we feel as though are getting drafted a little too high or being talked
Hmm.
about a little too much. So I feel like it's only right we start off on a positive note. So, Kaki,
Okay.
give me the first guy that you feel as though isn't talked about enough.
Okay. And I'm gonna start it off with like honestly, I've looked probably one of my favorite receivers in the draft. Right, I'm gonna be honest here, and this is a guy that I kind of want the Niners to draft if it comes down to it, right? And his name goes Malik Washington, receiver from Virginia, man. And you're talking about a guy where he's obviously not the tallest, right? But he's quick, and he's definitely plays more physical than he seems, right? You turn on the tape where he gets open in a flash. He has speed. He definitely has speed. He gets open. He runs great routes, great, especially over the middle, right? And he's one of those guys where like he's like a pinball, where it's like he gets the ball and he just keeps on going. He keeps on going, man. He fights for every yard, and that's speaking from the Niners' point of view, it's like that's the type of guy that we want, right? And I think that's the type of guy that everybody should want, right?
Hmm.
You get a guy who can not only beat man coverage, in the slot, but also take it to the house or even make something out of nothing, basically,
Okay.
right? And I just think that right now he's projected as like a third, bottom third, maybe mid fourth round pick. But I think honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if he's get drafted in the second round. I'm gonna be honest.
Okay.
I'm gonna be honest. Like that's how high I am on him.
Yeah. Very similarly, you talk about a guy that is, kind of lightning in a bottle, but
Hmm.
in my opinion, he may be the most physical wide receiver in the draft, and that's
Ooh.
Xavier Legette, um,
Yes, I
out of
love.
South
Yep.
Carolina. I'm slowly but surely falling in love with his game. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? You talk about a
Mm-hmm.
guy that's 6'3", 230, that runs a 4.39.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
He reminds me so fucking much of DK Metcalf. When he was
Mm.
coming out of Ole Miss. Just a big body, physical receiver, but that can get open downfield in a hurry. So,
Mm-hmm.
I feel as though he's in talks of second round, kind of. But I feel like if I'm a GM, I wouldn't be opposed to taking him in the first, right? If I'm
Yeah.
a team on that back end that really needs a receiver, the 49ers, like Xavier is definitely a guy that I'm circling and that we're gonna have a conversation
Yes.
about because I feel as though he's uber talented.
Mm-hmm.
If it wasn't for the fact of the top three guys being so talented, like he is a guy that would definitely be in conversations of going maybe top 20.
Mm-hmm.
And even now, I feel as though that's still in the realm of possibility and should be in the realm of possibility for him. Very explosive, very physical. Um, he sounds like Randy Moss. Um,
Yes. Yeah. His voice
so
caught everybody
yeah,
off guard.
I definitely did not expect for him to sound like that. But yeah, if I'm a GM, I would love to have him, in my facility.
Yeah, 100%. And let's, sticking on that topic of like talented prospects in the sense that like they have all the right tools. They just got to put it together, right? And I want to show some old linemen some love, man. And I'm gonna start off with Kieran Amagaji, offensive lineman from Yale, where I know he got injured, right, during the season, right, but I think he can play left tackle, right tackle, or either guard or tackle in general, anywhere on the line,
Okay.
except center, right? He's one of those guys where you turn on the tape, he dominates. Like I think, like he has first round quality traits, right? But because he goes to Yale, so he doesn't play the best comp,
Yep.
right? And he obviously the injury, so injury always lowers down the draft stock, right? But I think if he would stay healthy throughout the whole year, I think we'd be talking about him like maybe again like a second round pick, even I'll be honest, even like back end first round talent right there, right? But I think yeah, it's like he's definitely one of those project guys for sure, right? Because you never know with the smaller school guys, but
Yep.
in my opinion, I say fuck all that, bro. I turn on the tape. If my eyes see what I see, and it's good tape, you got to take a flyer on 'em.
Yeah. Kind of sticking to that same line of thinking where in my opinion, the tape speaks for itself, and a guy that in my opinion, personifies that is Jeremiah Trotter Jr. He's a guy that early on in the draft process, he was in the name and in the talks of being a top linebacker. But as the months and weeks have gone on, his name has definitely dropped.
Mhm.
And it confuses me a little bit. I mean, on one aspect, I get it, right? He doesn't have, the freaky measurables that, a lot of these other guys have or that, a
Mhm.
lot of these GMs, fall in love with. But in my opinion, he's the pure definition of a field general, right? Where he's a guy you put in the middle of your defense and you let him be the captain. You let him call the plays.
Mhm.
Because he's a smart fucking player, man. Like downhill, always in the right spot, always doing his job, and that's not something you can coach, right? That level of IQ, that level of leadership, right? Where for me, I want my middle linebacker to be the leader of my defense, similar to the quarterback from offense. So,
Mhm.
Jeremiah is a guy that, definitely can take on that role. Um, he reminds me funny enough, he reminds me a lot of not only Roquan Smith, but also
Mm.
Nick Bolton, coming out of Mizzou, right? Where the knock on Nick Bolton when he was coming out was his height. It was just his measurables. They compared to
Yeah.
a lot of I believe he came out the same year as I believe Isaiah Simmons or something like that, if I'm
Yep.
not mistaken. And
Mhm.
if that is so, right, Isaiah Simmons got taken a lot higher because he was that freaky athlete, whatever. But if you're sitting back and now, obviously, with hindsight, comparing the two's career, Nick Bolton has been the better player, right? So I feel like
Yes.
sometimes, these GMs and scouts, they get a little bit too concerned on what it says on paper and less about what's going on the field. Both short tacklers, both can definitely hold their own in pass coverage. The only I feel as though if both Nick Bowen and Jeremiah, if they both are 6'2", 6'3", easy first round locks. But because
Yeah.
they're sub 6'1", around
Mhm.
a 6 foot, around that kind of ballpark, that knocks them down. But if I'm a team that is in need of linebacker help, like I'm rushing up to the podium to grab Jeremiah. So, very interesting to see where he goes, in the draft. But yeah. He's definitely a guy that I believe deserves a lot more love than he's getting right now.
Mhm. And let's continue with that that general topic of like guys that are that they kind of just you know they have the traits, but like I said, it's a matter of fact of teams whether or not they want to take a flyer or like want to take that chance on those players, right? And I want to talk about a guy that I don't think you might not even know, right? And I mean, I looked through all the mock drafts. He's like projected to be an undrafted free agent, right? But I think this man needs to be drafted. He needs to be drafted, and his name is Micah Abrams, right? He goes to Marshall, right? He's 5'11". He's a cornerback, and you want to talk about production. And I know, yes, he does go to Marshall, right? But he gets the production. You're talking about the last 4 years, 4 interceptions, 6 interceptions, one interception, right? And that's from 4 interceptions going on from his most previous year, and then always his rookie year in his collegiate career, right? And you turn on the tape and I get it. The main thing about him is that he needs to tackle better. He needs to wrap up. I
Mm-hmm.
get that for sure, right? If you can't tackle in the NFL, you're not gonna get on the field, right? You look at the cornerback for the Seahawks, right? Tariq Woolen, right? He's a great corner where he can definitely pick off the ball, but if you can't tackle, you're literally gonna get benched.
Yeah.
You're literally gonna get benched, right? And so I get that, but I mean, I think, in my opinion, I think the player that he reminds me of is Tariq Woolen.
Hmm.
He does. I think, in my opinion, right? Like I know, like I don't know. I think it's just a thing for me where like I see
You
smaller
talking about
school
play style?
play style.
Oh, okay, I'm gonna say 'cause the measurables are way different.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, yeah. Measurables are way different.
Mhm.
But I'm just saying like play style,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
But I'm just saying that like a guy like him, that you see the production, right? And it's like he's worthy because he's projected to be undrafted free agent, right? I'm just saying that I think he needs to be drafted, right? I don't think
Okay.
he's a guy that you can just let go to like the to the waivers or whatever, right? I think
Mhm.
he's definitely gonna be a camp body, but he's gonna give you like he's gonna give you good competition there at the
Yeah.
position. Who knows? You
Mhm.
know, if he turns out to be a great pick, I said it first.
You know, you know, corner is in a lot of ways, in my opinion, outside of quarterback is the most demanding position. It's the hardest position to
Yes.
play.
Hmm.
Um, but another guy that I really like is Mike Sanders still, right? Like
Mm.
I feel like talent wise, man, like he could go first round. Like
Yep.
again, if I'm a team on the back end that really needs a corner, and some of the quote unquote top guys are taken, I would not be opposed to taking Mike. He is the pure definition of a Swiss Army knife on
Hmm.
at defensive back. I feel like you can line him up inside, outside, in the box, like anywhere you need him. I feel as though he's gonna excel at the next level. Some of the knocks on him, he's slightly older, right? In October he'll be turning 24. So, that's a little older for a player, especially for a corner. But what most prospects get knocked on for being older is, they don't seem like they're a finished product, but Mike is very, very polished. He may be the most polished corner in the draft, in my opinion, in terms of his fluidity, in terms of his technique. He is the like I feel as though he has the lowest floor of any corner in the draft. So you know, he's 5'10", 183. He ran a 4.47. In the last 2 years of his collegiate career, he had over 100 tackles, 13 pass deflections, 4 sacks, and 7 interceptions, 2 touchdowns. So you're talking about a guy that when he's on the field, he is impacting the game, and it does not matter how. Right? He could be in the backfield, right, with 4 sacks. He could be picking the ball off with 7 picks, or he could just be tackling. Like you don't have to worry about Mike wrapping up.
Oh no,
Right? He is a physical corner. He loves to hit. He loves to be physical. He loves to make contact.
not
Um,
shy at all.
no, not at all. And his game reminds me so much of a Chris Harris Jr. Right? A
Ooh.
very, very physical corner, slightly smaller in stature, but a guy that you can put him on bigger receivers and he will more than hold his own. He's not afraid
Mm.
of it. So, any team again that needs, DB help, coming from one of the best, if not the best defense in all of college last year, a guy that I would not mind, having some of this on. Mike Sanders still is that guy, man. I love his game.
Hmm. You know, I think it's time for me to switch it up. I know I've been talking about smaller school guys, but I think it's time to go to a bigger school, right? And in terms, let me get this straight. This guy that I'm going to talk about, he is going to get drafted high, but I think he should be drafted higher, like a little bit higher than some of these other prospects in his position, right? And Kai, he kind of hinted at it in his mock drafts, right? And this guy I want to talk about is Penix. Man, I want to talk about Penix, right? And I think that
Good
out
pick.
of the quarterbacks in the draft,
Uh huh.
I full heartedly think that he's the third best quarterback in the draft.
Ooh,
Yeah,
third best.
third best. Yes, better
Okay.
than Drake May,
Better than
right?
Drake. Okay, it's funny you say that. There's been a lot of discussion about Drake May in terms of you know how people perceive his talent. So that
Hmm.
doesn't that okay. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know if I necessarily agree, but I definitely feel as though Penix is closer to Drake May than
Yeah.
he is a Bo Nix, right? So
Oh yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah.
love
Yeah.
Penix's game, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Like, in just quickly, like the thing between May and Penix is that I think it's splitting hairs. Like, it's like what you like about what game, each player's game a little bit more, right? It's all a matter of preference, right? But I know the one main knock of him is just injuries, right?
Yeah.
But you can see, I think, I look at all the teams, right? Like, who needs a quarterback, right? Or eventually needs a quarterback, and unfortunately, right? There's a team that I do not want him to go to because I think that he might take off with that team, and that's the Seattle Seahawks. If he
Ooh.
stays in, if he stays in Washington, right, with the Seattle Seahawks, right, and who knows what the Seahawks will actually do because
Yeah.
they just signed a offensive guard. For funny
Mhm.
enough, he used to be with the Niners, right, and I think Lakin Tomlinson,
Mhm.
right? So they got a interior lineman. So it's like, what are they going to do with that first round pick, right?
Yeah.
And so it's going to be interesting who
Okay.
where they could
Mhm.
draft.
Even
Um,
with them, he picking up the former quarterback in Washington. His name's elude me. Um, what's it? Fuck. What is his fucking
from
name?
Wash, is it from Washington?
Yeah, yeah. He went to NC State. I
Oh
mean,
wait, no, no,
UNC.
no, no, Sam Howell,
Yeah,
somehow.
Sam Howell. Sam Howell. Yeah. So with
Yeah.
Seattle picking up Sam Howell, right? If they do decide to shock, and it would not surprise me if the Seahawks take an unorthodox player in the first round. They've kind of made a trend out of it.
Yeah.
So if they take a Michael Penix in the first round, like
Yeah.
that'll be a very interesting. Not, I wouldn't necessarily even really say quarterback battle, right? Because you are afforded the position where you can sit Penix for a year, right, and learn
Yes.
under Gino.
Hmm.
Learn under Howell. Have these guys in the same room talking ball, throwing against each other, like where, like you just said, like from a team perspective that is a rival. That is the last place I would want him to go. And very similarly, like I don't want him to go to the Raiders or Broncos because I love his game and I would hate to
Yeah.
have to root against them. Not only
Yeah.
just because of that, but I also just believe he's very talented and he could be the difference between those teams making the playoffs and not making the playoffs.
Oh yeah, 100%. And just one last thing I want to say about Penix is that, and we'll get into it about like overrated guys, but like
Mm-hmm.
some of the quarterbacks we're talking about getting drafted as high as, it's just insane.
We
And
gonna talk
it's just
about it.
fucking insane, man.
We're definitely gonna talk about it, but it's a couple guys I do want to give some flowers to,
Yeah.
and you know one of those guys, and it's weird. Like I don't feel as though he's off. He's super underrated, but I just feel
Hmm.
like because of the nature of who his teammate was in college, a lot of the times he was
Hmm.
left in the shadow, and that's Brian Thomas Jr. Right, where you're
Ooh.
lining up opposite side of Malik Neighbors, where obviously everybody's talking about Malik going top five, but Brian Thomas is a very very talented wide receiver where
Hmm.
I mean, obviously, it sounds obvious, but again, if Malik Neighbors wasn't on that team, Brian Thomas would be the number one guy. So I feel as though he has that level of talent where you're talking about a guy that even though he very similar to Leggett, where he only has 1 year of real production, you're talking about the measurables, man, where you're 6'4", 205, you run a 4.33 40.
Yeah.
Like, he has 17 touchdowns last year. Like, this is a guy that can take the top of a defense, that can, in my opinion, if I'm a defensive coordinator planning against this guy, I don't want him to get behind my defense. Like, he reminds me so much of not only George Pickens, but Martavis Bryant, right? Big body
Ooh.
receivers
I
that
like
not
that.
only can go
I
up and
actually like
get it,
that.
but can also run by you, right? Very like deep, very tall, deep threats. So I feel as though if he's able to link up with, an explosive offense or an explosive quarterback, cough cough Buffalo, in my opinion, and this may be a hot take, If he goes to a team like Buffalo, he can have 1,000 yards as a rookie.
Hmm.
I could
I, I, I,
easily
wa-
see him
I
having
wouldn't
a
be
thousand yards
surprised.
as a rookie, where he may, and a lot of this comes down to where a lot of these guys go, where he could potentially have the most receiving yards of any of these wide receivers as a rookie.
Yeah, I could definitely see that, right? And it's funny enough because like this receiver class is
Yes,
very loaded,
very talented.
right? Where like maybe somebody you get in the second round, he should have been in the first round,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so it goes to show how the draft is just oozing with talent, man.
Yeah, you know
Yeah.
it. It's just one of those things that I wish instead of Quentin Johnston that we had anybody else because a lot of these wide receivers in this draft are really good at football. Something that Quentin Johnston is not very good at. So, um, again, very interested to see where a lot of these guys go. Funny enough, I saw a mock draft where we trade back and we get both Brock Bowers and Brian Thomas Jr. So
That's the
it's quite the haul, right? Where you're
yeah.
getting two pass catchers, and we'll talk about eventually about the outlooks of both our teams as we sit right now. But
Hmm.
I don't know if I'd be necessarily mad at that.
I know you wouldn't. And wait, was that already five or?
I have one more guy.
Okay, yeah, you're right. Yeah, I do have one more guy, and let's what, let's just stick on the topic of receivers because we love receivers, right?
Yes.
And it's funny enough, the guy that I have here as my last guy is underrated. It's the one and only Brendan Rice, Brendan fucking Rice, man. And
Okay.
you know, I think I saw a post and a report from Bucky Brooks, right, where he was talking about Brendan Rice and where he can land, right,
Uh-huh.
and he talked about a certain receiver that he said that Brendan Rice kind of reminds him of in terms of like measurables and like what kind of impact that he could have in NFL, right, and I think Brendan Rice can have a Puka Nakua type of
I can see
you
that.
know Puka Nakua type of involvement or impact on an NFL team,
Yes.
right? They run identical. They have similar measurables, and I think this guy can take off. I think he definitely take off, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, he doesn't have the greatest numbers in terms of productions,
Uh-huh.
right? Obviously, right? But I think, we all know his father, Jerry Rice, you know, arguably one of the greatest players of all time and receivers of all time, right? So, we all know that how his father trains him and how he's going to from day one, he knew how to, how to be pro ready,
Yes.
right? And so that I think that's one of those things that he has an advantage of than other receivers, or they might be more talented, but he's been taught the right way since day one, so and becoming the path of an NFL receiver, right? So I think that wherever he goes to, he'll do his thing.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about a player that's born from NFL royalty, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
So like he's another guy that I'm very excited to see where he lands. How he translates to the NFL. And honestly, bro, I really hope that he does go to San Francisco. I feel like that's an amazing story.
Yeah,
Um, question: if he goes to the 49ers, do you think they let him wear 80?
I think they will. I'll be honest,
If I'm him now,
but
it's
I don't think he will though. I don't
yeah.
think he
I'm gonna say
will.
it's two lines of thinking, right? It's like I
That'd be
kind of
crazy.
would kind of want to wear my dad's number, but at the same time, I also might want to blaze my own trail. That's a lot
Yeah,
of pressure to be put on my shoulders. However, I feel like it would be nice to see number 8 Rice number 80 line up again, right? Obviously in our
yeah.
lifetime,
Uh huh.
but the final guy that I have is a guy that throughout the entire draft process, I've said over and over and over again that he's one of my favorite prospects in this draft. And it's just unfortunate that the position that he plays is kind of up and down. Like nobody really has a true number one guy. And that's Braylon Allen, running back out of Wisconsin. I've raved about this guy so many times. Like he is probably my favorite running back prospect in this draft, or probably my favorite running back prospect since maybe Travis Etienne. Like I just love his
Mm.
game. Like a very physical back. He funny enough, he just turned 20 in January. Um, he has
Yeah,
over 3,000 yards and 35 touchdowns in 3 years in college. He's
insane.
6'2", 245. He didn't participate in the 40 because he's still recovering from a high ankle sprain he suffered against Ohio State during the season. But he reminds me so much of Derrick Henry and DeMarco Murray, right? Just
Mm.
two big backs that once they get a full head of steam, like listen, it's going to be a lot of business decisions being taken once he gets to the league, right? Where
Yeah.
either I'm about to try to clip his feet or I'm about to say, Coach, I got blocked out of the play. I don't know what you want me to do. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a corner. What, like, again, you're talking about a guy that is 6'2", damn near 250, running at you with
Yep.
full head of speed and some shoulder pads. Listen, this is the game where you find out who's a man, right? So
Yeah.
again, this guy is a specimen in all the ways. Like 20, right? He's only 20. In his rookie year, he will be 20 years old. So at the end of his contract, especially if I don't think he'll go first, but in my opinion, I wouldn't be mad at taking a guy like him in the first round. Like, and it's crazy, right? Because again,
Hmm.
my philosophy on running backs, but he's one of those guys that kind of breaks that mold where a lot of it is because a lot of these guys, by the time they get to the league, they're like 22, 23. Where at the end
Yeah.
of their contract, their rookie deals, they're like 28, where they kind of in that gray area where do I want to pay you, into your 30s or do I not? Where he could possibly have about two contracts before he
Hmm.
hits his 30s. So this is a guy that has plenty of tread left on the wheels. And, if I'm a team like the Chargers, if I'm the team, what's another team that could really use a running back? Like, dare I say, even the Bengals,
Yeah.
where if you place him in a pass heavy offense where it's just guys on the outside where he's looking at a 5-man box, you're talking about
Jesus.
you're talking about a position where he could be putting up Ezekiel Elliott numbers as a rookie. You know what I
Yep.
mean? I believe in him that much. I believe he's that talented where he can have that level of impact on an NFL franchise immediately, man. Like
Even
again,
on the Cowboys too. So I'm like Zeke.
he also could go to Dallas, right? Where
Hmm.
he would fit what they need to a T, right? He
Yep.
would fit that mold to a T. So,
Hmm.
very, very interested to see where he lands. But yeah, that was my final underrated guy. Um I feel like, it's obviously there was two sides to this coin. It was underrated and now we're going on to overrated. And you alluded to it, and it's funny, right? Like out of the five overrated prospects I have, three of them are quarterbacks.
Three.
Um, three of
Oh,
them are quarterbacks. So
let's get it. Let's get it, man.
listen, man. It again it harkens back to what you said about Penix, where a lot of this really comes down to the proximity that a lot of these teams, a lot of these draft guys have these guys ahead of Penix, and I just feel as though that's just blatantly wrong. Two of them, JJ McCarthy and Bo Nix,
Yep.
right? In my opinion, I really don't see the appeal of JJ McCarthy like at all. He gives me a lot of vibes of Zach Wilson, where a lot of people are getting enamored by his quote unquote arm strength or his arm talent. But the reality of the situation is he was in an offense where he was not asked to do a lot. He was a
That's fair.
he was the definition of a game manager, where he did what needed to be, like, I mean, he fucking was a generational hand the ball off bull. So it's just one of those things where I don't see how you see that and you translate that as to a top five pick, especially where you have a guy like a Michael Penix that was in Heisman conversations and isn't even getting that talk. Very
Mhm.
simple. Now, Bo Nix, he's in a position where at the very least he has a lot more numbers to back up what a lot of these talking heads are saying, but
Mm-hmm.
I just don't see him as a first round guy. Like I could
Mm-hmm.
see second round, third round, but first round, you're talking top 15. I just don't see it, bro.
They're talking about even top 7. You know what I
Even top
mean?
7, I
That's kind of crazy.
me, he it just doesn't make sense. And kind of the running joke of this entire offseason, Spencer Rattler. You have certain motherfuckers that are saying that he's the second most talented quarterback in this draft. Smoking
Oh
crack.
boy,
I don't, in my opinion, like
they ain't even
maybe
brisk.
fifth round pick, maybe sixth round pick, but I just don't see it. Right? You're talking about a guy that small frame turns 24 in September. He's not a polished, a finished product. He got his job taken. He transferred, and then in the 2 years that he transferred, his first year he throws 18 touchdowns to 12 interceptions. His second year he throws 19 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. What the fuck am I missing?
And
He
that,
tested poorly. I just don't understand. Like, again, I just feel like this is a classic case of people overthinking it. And I
yeah,
mean, we'll see, but yeah,
yeah, like I said, man, like I think for us, for both of us at least, like the quarterbacks that are being mentioned going higher than are expected, that are higher than they should be, it's just it's out this world, and
yep,
not in a good way. Not in a good way.
no,
Like, like once I saw that JJ McCarthy was getting mocked as far as early as like 4 or even like 7 or something like that, I was like, all right. So they're gonna go the route of like 4 quarterbacks in a row. That's not gonna happen.
I, I, I just can't.
Exactly, and it's very frustrating for me to see that. Where, like you said, like where you're drafting a guy that high up, I understand the game manager type of thing. Where it's like this other side of it, where what if he is asked to do more? Well, we don't know,
I don't know.
right? There's other quarterbacks. There's a reason why you got quarterbacks that showed more.
Yeah,
So why get a JJ McCarthy if you could just trade up the fucking 3 and just get the other quarterback you can get,
I
right?
just don't see it, bro.
And it's just insane for me. And I'm gonna move on from the quarterbacks because you kind of just cover that up with 3 prospects. And JJ was one of my guys that was overrated. I didn't mention the 2 other guys because I had a couple other guys I wanted to switch out about.
Jim
But
Harbaugh, please don't sue me.
hey, I'm gonna get to that in a little bit, right? But that's the 2 other guys besides JJ that I want to talk about was I'll be honest, Johnny Newen. Johnny Newen. I think it's a little bit overrated. He's getting talked about as being one of the not just being one of the best D tackles in the draft, but also one of the best pass rushers in a draft. Right? For me, I get it. He's shown production. He's a very, 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 very pivotal to the Illinois defense,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I don't know. I just see when you turn on tape, I just see too many times where he's just on the fucking ground. He's
Yeah,
just getting moved. He's a small guy. To be honest, he's getting moved around, and I'm not saying that smaller guys, especially at D tackle, cannot find success. In which we all saw, Aaron Donald, who just
yeah,
retired. Right, he was a smaller guy who produced. Right, obviously one of the best players in the game, but I just don't see it from Johnny Newen. Where I don't think he's better than what's his name, Byron Murphy. I don't
yeah.
think. I don't think he's even better than. I think he's a second round talent. I'll be honest. I'm not. I'm not.
Mm,
I'm not really high on him. Right. Obviously, in our mock drafts, I had him mocked there because, just going with the trend of where he should be in. I guess. Right.
mm-hmm.
But if I had my choice, I don't think he'll be a first round pick in my opinion, just because he's just moving around. He's getting moved around a lot, right? And when he gets to the NFL, right, when you get to the playoffs, Super Bowl and stuff like that, and
Mm,
they're gonna find ways to just knock you off your
yeah.
feet, right? And yeah, and then the other guy I wanted to talk about is come on now, we're talking about overrated players. You guys already know it's a common theme. Not a fan of Rome. I'm not.
Mm,
I'm not a
yeah.
fan of Rome.
Yep.
And you guys can hate me all you want, right? But I'll repeat. I'll repeat it. Like my thing of Rome is that I don't think personally that he should be drafted as far as top 10, top 8 receiver,
Yep.
especially when you got guys talking about him being drafted higher than Malik Neighbors, right?
Yep.
I just don't see it. I just don't. Right now, if you want to talk about maybe sliding him down to like 15 or 20, something like that, maybe I can get around. Maybe I can get behind it, right? But I just think there's other guys in the draft that are better than him. I'm be honest,
Okay.
right? Like I think because I think my favorite receiver is better than Rome. Oh, and that's probably a hot take. My favorite receiver in the draft is Labaconki. I think he's better than Rome, right? And I
Mm.
full hardly say that. I'll put it out there. I don't care. You guys can clip this if you want. You guys can clip this if you
Ooh.
want, right?
Okay.
But I just think when it comes to the pros, I don't think he can be a number one. I don't. Right?
Ooh.
I don't
Okay.
think he can be a number one. That's why when we had it a our very first mock draft, we had him going to the Saints. I think that's a perfect fit
Yeah.
because he doesn't have to do everything himself. So you got Olave. Olave, he's I think Olave he's a number one. I think he's able
Mm-hmm.
to do
I
everything,
agree.
right? And so it takes a short weight off his shoulders, right? But when he's the only guy, I just don't see it. That's just my
Yeah.
opinion, right?
Mhm.
And yeah, and obviously it just depends where you get drafted, of course,
Yeah.
right? But I don't really I will say this: I don't hate him. It's just that I just don't think he should get drafted as high as he should. And
Hmm.
hey, man, if he wants to get drafted, if the Cardinals want to move back and they want to draft Rome, more hate for him then.
Listen, um, I have I have a guy that's kind of the same vein, right? Where you know, by off name value, very big name, right? But
Mm.
I'm just not on that wagon, and that's Blake Corum, right? Like I'm
Ooh.
not a very big fan. Like I like his game per se, I just don't like his frame. Like
Mhm.
I'm not a big fan of sub 5'10" running backs. Like, can they be successful? Obviously, right? Very recently, you got Jameer Gibbs, you got uh, Swift, right? But the thing about it is, and a lot of those guys, I don't feel like they can be number one three down backs. Like, you got Swift that I feel like he's a guy that benefits from being in a committee. Where can he be physical? Can he, command a lot of carries? Yes. But again, you're asking a guy that has a smaller frame to go through a lot of mileage, a lot of hits. Where I don't know if in terms of uh, a safety perspective, if he can handle that kind of workload. Same with Jameer Gibbs, right? Where I feel like he benefits from having a guy like, David Montgomery sharing the backfield, where David Montgomery can take a lot of those hits off of him, right? Where kind of he could be more of a spark plug. And I feel like if Blake Corum can go to a team, where they already have an established hammer, right? Where listen, I wouldn't be opposed if I'm Baltimore taking a flyer on him in maybe the second, third round, right? Where you already have a Derrick Henry there that can be that hammer, where kind of that thunder, but he's the lightning. But if you're asking for him to do all of that, like I just don't see it. He struggles in pass protection, which is expected from a guy of his frame. But again, a lot of guys are saying that he's number one running back in this class, and I just don't see it. I
Oh,
just don't
number
see it.
one.
Yes, yeah, I've seen a lot of that.
Oh,
I just couldn't
whoa.
disagree more.
Yeah. See, the number one running back. I did not know about that.
Mhm.
I didn't know about that, but I definitely agree with you on that. It's just a size, man. I know he
Yeah.
had production, but it's just a size.
Hmm.
Right? We in terms of running backs, we only seen very very few running backs with that stature have success,
Yes.
right? So
Yep.
it's very iffy, right? But moving on to my last two guys, right? My last two guys I want to talk about. One of them is a first round, projected to be a first round pick. The other one is projected to be a second round pick,
Mhm.
probably. The first round pick that I think is overrated, and you kind of opened my eyes a little bit. Is J.C. Latham. J.C.
Mm,
Latham. People have him as the third, probably get the third best tackle, fourth best tackle in the draft, right? But
yeah.
when you mentioned that, like, there are other guys that are better than him, right? And it opened my eyes to, like, you know what? Let me go back to tape. Right? Let's see how how he compares to some of these other guys, right? And I definitely see it now. I definitely see it now, right? Because you look at all the Alabama games, especially, right, that he played this year, looked a little off. Look a
Hmm.
lot they have a quarterback, in Jalen Moreau, where he's a scrambling quarterback, right? But what they want to do is pass the ball, but he's constantly scrambling for his life,
Hmm.
right? And there are many times where he doesn't pick up the blitz, or he doesn't block his man, right? Or he gets bull rush just into the
Yeah.
quarterback, right? And that's one of the things where, like, if you're a team that's looking for a tackle, right, especially at the left tackle position, right, that's not certain traits you really want to see for your blind side,
Negative.
guy, right? So there's that. And then my other guy that I think that he's kind of overrated, I don't think he's that much overrated, right? Is Edrin Cooper. Uh,
Interesting.
I I think I think that he will be a solid a linebacker in the draft for
Hmm.
sure, right? But I just don't think he's better than some of these other running backs, right? And maybe I should have mentioned this one guy in the underrated players category, but I don't think he's better than Cedric Gray. I don't think so. I
Okay.
don't think, right? Talking about a guy where he gets his production year in, year out, right?
Hmm.
He's Mr. Consistency, right? I don't think with Edrin Cooper is that, obviously it's tough with him. It's very, very tough with him because,
Hmm.
like, the flaw with him is that if you're able to allow him to just fill in the gaps and just attack, right? Let him run free. Then sure, right? He'll do his thing. But I
Hmm.
think for some systems, I don't think he can play in every system. I don't think that,
No.
right? I think there's certain systems, like, I'd say, like, a. It's funny enough. I think the best system that he could play with is the Eagles. Funny enough,
Yeah.
right? For their Vic Fangio, they want them to, like, they play a certain defense where they don't let anything, uh you know like, defend the explosive play, rather,
Hmm.
right? And so basically just
Keep
you
everything in
know
front of you.
exactly keep anything in front of you and just get to the person who has the ball,
Hmm.
right? But there's a few guys I just think is better than him. Like I said, Cedric Gray, Payne Wilson, right? Even Junior Colson. I don't think he's better than Junior Colson,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And so, like I said, I'm not saying that he's not going to be a great player. I think he'll be a phenomenal player, right? Just depends
Mhm.
where he gets drafted. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like he's like kind of similar to, well, kind of the opposite of, Jeremiah Trotter, where I
Yep.
feel as though
Mm-hmm.
because of his measurables, he gets bumped up a little bit higher than he really should. And the tape never lies. But this final guy I have, and this may be very controversial,
Ooh,
because
come on.
from having conversations with a lot of people, he is definitely a person that a lot of people like and a lot of people want. But I feel as though, in my eyes, if I'm a GM, I'm pumping the brakes a little bit, and that's Chop Robinson. Um,
Ooh, pork chop. That's crazy.
it's,
I get
it's
you
it's
though.
difficult with him because I wouldn't say he's the most overrated person in this draft, but when you're comparing the conversation that he's being held in, and you look at the production, they don't match. You're talking about a
Yeah.
guy that has 6 career sacks in college. 6. He has 6 more sacks in college than I do, and I never enrolled in college. So it's like, you're talking about taking that guy in the first round. I just didn't know. He's one of those guys that his stock really rose with the combine, right? Where it comes to testing, he ran fast, he jumped far, he lifted heavy. But when we're talking about football, and we're talking about impacting the game, I don't see how you can take him in good faith in the first round over so many guys that have that production and also have those measurables. I don't see how you take him that high. In my opinion, I have him. I have him with a third round grade. Like, I believe he is a third round pick. He is a big project, a super uber athlete, but again, like, you gotta have production. You can't just, you know, just run around in tights and think that you're going to be a first round pick or think that you're going to be a franchise cornerstone guy. Like, and if I'm taking a guy in the first round, like, I want a guy that I have a little bit more trust in. So again, I don't hate the guy. I don't feel like he's trash or anything. I just believe he's a third round pick, not a first round pick. You did, but
Now, that's crazy. That's crazy. That's crazy. But anyways, uh, yeah, I too I too think that Chop Robinson is not a first round pick, right?
Mhm.
Um, like like you said, I don't think he's the most overrated either, right? That's why I didn't have him on my top five, but I definitely see why you went with there because like he has been getting noise about being a first round pick, and I just also don't see it. I mean, me personally, I think he's like a mid second round pick. I think, but that's just like you said, it's purely on traits,
Yeah,
right? And the traits are straight off the roof. But like you
yeah,
said, if his traits off the roof, why is he not getting production?
yeah.
Yeah, so that's like something doesn't add up here, man. Something doesn't
Mhm.
add up, and so I definitely can see why Chop is like not a first round pick in your eyes.
Yeah, and with a lot of these both overrated and underrated things and discussions, all of it's projection, right? We're taking what we've seen or the lack thereof and making a prediction or projection of what it will translate to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
Neither of us are, can we see the future? So it's a good chance that we're wrong on all of this.
Yeah.
But the fun of these conversations is looking back on it, right? After their
Mm-hmm.
rookie season, after the second year, and think about, like, how many did we hit on? How many did we miss on, right? So, that's why we love having these conversations,
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I feel like this has been a very good episode, right? The return
Mm-hmm.
back to football, a
Yes,
little bit of a
sir.
hiatus, with the basketball season going on. And listen, the play-in hunt has been very, very fascinating to watch,
Mm-hmm.
and we will definitely be talking about it. The very next video we post actually will be on that.
Mm-hmm.
But we had to come back to our roots a little bit, talk about football for a little bit. The draft is right around the corner. Some big
Mm-hmm.
moves have been made in free agency. And yeah, man, you guys have been showing us a tons of support on all of our social media platforms, on our videos. You
Mm-hmm.
guys have been sharing, you guys have been liking, you guys have been subscribing and commenting, and so all of it we see, all of it we appreciate, and we urge you guys to keep it going, right? You know, we're building a little community here, and listen, I'm sure I can speak a cock when I say that we love doing it. So,
Mm-hmm.
we don't plan on stopping here. Um,
No, sir.
but yeah, man. I mean, with that being said, we'll have all our social media links in the bio, in the bottom of the video description. But again, keep commenting, subscribing, and sharing, and we'll catch you on the next one, man.
Yes, sir. Peace.